The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.
The United States is deeply troubled by actions taken against those protesting a draft law in Georgia, and the government should change its course, U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said on Thursday, adding that there is still time to work collaboratively with Georgia, but the Georgian government needs to change course for that to be the case. The National Statistics Office of Georgia published the Harmonized Index of Consumer Prices. According to the document, the Harmonized Index of Consumer Prices increased by 1.8% in April year-over-year. According to the mentioned index, 1.5% inflation was observed in April in Georgia, which hit a record high in the last 12 months. Georgian billionaire Bidzina Ivanishvili sued Credit Suisse for 200 million Swiss francs, which is around 220 million USD, in Geneva over a rogue trader scandal in a suit that goes beyond the $1.34 billion he's already been awarded by courts in Bermuda and Singapore. The money the ex-prime minister of Georgia is seeking is part of Swiss civil claims tied to former Credit Suisse banker Patrice Lescadron. A fraud conviction in 2018. He was found to have run a scheme where he took money from Ivanishvili's accounts to try and mask growing losses in other client portfolios. Goicha Javakhishvili announced he is leaving from his position as the ambassador of Georgia to France on social media. He has already requested the termination of his tenure ahead of schedule. Javakhishvili stated that he remains committed to Georgia's European future and values. He reiterated his belief in Georgia's European destiny and his support for the country's journey towards European integration. I no longer see my role and resources aligning with this approach, moving towards Europe and at the same time protecting myself from Europe, said Georgian ambassador to France. This is The Checkpoints. I'm Elena Angelashvili, author and the host of the show, and the Checkpoints team is ready to sum up Business and Economics Week for you. Beating opponents, intimidation, dispersal of demonstrations, repressions, and other cruel methods have nothing to do with Europe. These are actions indicative of an authoritarian regime, said the president of Georgia, Salome Zurabishvili, during a speech at the event dedicated to Europe Day. The president said the Georgian nation is wise and does not follow provocations. The Georgian nation would not have existed if it had not been so wise, because the Georgian nation is wise. It does not follow provocations. It will not accept confrontation, but will not give up, will follow the European path to free elections, she stated. EU Ambassador to Georgia Paul Herchinsky also addressed Georgian people at the event dedicated to Europe Day.
9 steps were given to Georgia in order to move on, to fulfill. We really need an acceleration on the implementation of 9 steps. Time is running out. There are still several months till the publication of the next report, but we really need to not to be distracted, but to focus on necessary reforms. That the draft law on the transparency of foreign influence, as it stands now, is a serious obstacle on the way of Georgia's EU integration. We sincerely hope that a way will be found to either withdraw or to seriously change this law. We all know that the Venice Commission has been asked to provide its legal opinion. We are waiting for this legal opinion to be published very soon, and I sincerely hope that parliamentary procedures will be found in order not to have this law in its current form being adopted. When it comes to possible negative developments, I'm really sorry that you are even asking me this question. We are here to make sure that Georgia is successful that Georgia succeeds on its way towards EU membership, as is the will of the vast majority of Georgian people. So for the moment, let's hope that this law will not be passed and we will not have to reflect on possible negative reactions on part of the European Union.
Ted Jonas, business lawyer, was one of the many demonstrants who was beaten, detained, and then released by the police during peaceful demonstrations. In addition to over 20 years of private law practice experience, most of it at the international level, Ted Jonas has worked in the U.S. nonprofit, federal, legislative, and judicial sectors. Here is his story on the night from April 30 to May the 1st on Rustaveli Avenue. Ted, I'm glad you're here.
Didi Marmova, Elene, akavart kide, chven akavart kide.
Yes, exactly. Ted, please tell us your story. I want our viewers to hear your story.
I had been coming to the demonstrations for several days already. Every time I came, I was bringing a big EU flag. I live in Sololaki close by, so it's easy for me to come. That night, of course, there was a much bigger demonstration. This was the night of April 30th, May 1st. There was a much bigger demonstration because everyone was provoked by Bidzina's speech the day before. There's no question about that. Bidzina's speech was the provocation to that large demonstration because he announced that he was taking this country away from the West. He announced that there will be a repression after the elections, which actually, as we know, has already started. So people showed up. Some came there with my flag. And the organizers were announcing that people should go to the sides and behind the parliament because they were in the parliament, I think, considering the bill on second reading. So the idea was to make a protest around the parliament. So at about 9:30, I'm starting at an early point, but it's important. I went to the back of the parliament, and there were probably 1,000 people at least behind the parliament, and there was a big line of robocops and the water truck on Chitadze Street. So they had their back to Chitadze facing us. We were behind the parliament facing them. Everybody's right next to each other. People are talking to them, you know, you should be on our side. There's no violence happening, it's just talking. And all of a sudden, they attacked. They attacked with pepper spray, and they began moving forward. And I was just shocked by this. This was the first time I've ever, in any of the demonstrations I've gone to, been on the front line and been there where they attacked.
Yes, without saying that now we're going to attack, back,
no, they didn't say
whatever.
anything. And actually what had happened was, I was not right at the front when they attacked. I had walked, I have a bad back, okay? So standing for a long time, I'm 61 years old and I have a bad back, and standing for a long time hurts. So I had gone and sat down on a ledge by the door into the parliament, the back door. So I was sitting there, and all of a sudden people started running. I didn't hear any warning or anything. At that point, I was probably 40 meters from Chitadze Street, whatever it is, 30, 40 meters from the entrance of Parliament to Chitadze Street. Everybody starts running. So I thought they were running to go down to Rustaveli for some reason on Rustaveli, so I got up and started to go that way, and then I heard somebody say, don't run, one of the demonstrators, and then I looked back and I saw that the police were advancing, the robocops were advancing. And then when I saw what happened, people were being gassed and everything, I was just furious. I had a reaction of, they can't do that. So I actually ran forward, and a lot of people were trying to block them like this. I actually, also sort of did the same thing. I stood there ready to block them. And then I got hit with pepper spray. At that point, they're very close to me. And so I ran back like everybody did, because you get hit with the pepper spray. And I had goggles and I had a mask, surgical mask, but they don't do any good. And then this goes on for 2 hours behind Parliament. People would be standing there, and all of a sudden they would push forward gas and everything like that. So I was very angry, and because of their aggression. And so after a while, though, things sort of dissipated behind the Parliament, And we had heard the water cannons and we had smelled the tear gas coming up from Rustaveli at, I don't know, maybe 11 o'clock, 11:30. So I thought the demonstration was over on Rustaveli at about 12 o'clock. So I go walking down, it was probably Lesa Ukrainka. I go walking down Lesa Ukrainka Street because they had the other, Chichinadze or whatever the other street was closed. So I went to Lesa Ukrainka and I walked down to Rustaveli, and there weren't too many people around at about 12:30. I get down to Rustaveli and it's like, oh my God, there must have been 20,000 people all the way from Lesa Ukrainka all the way back as far as you could see, you know, to the opera. I mean, all the way back. And the line of RoboCops was right there where Lesa Ukrainka comes to Rustaveli. And they had big water cannons, they had the sonar noise and all of this. So everybody is there on that front line. I have photographs from that night. There were women standing with the RoboCops right there with their backs to them, women holding flags, very brave. You know, people are talking to them and all of that. So I was on the front line kind of walking back and forth, taking pictures of people. I have my flag. Like everybody else, I'm, yelling, Galmar Jews and everything. And then all of a sudden they attacked. Now, actually, I moved back a little bit. I moved about 5 people back, and then suddenly they attacked.
Again, without warning, without any signs of...
This time they
had warning
They had
already.
the electric voice.
That woman, right?
Yes. What does she say? Tzinam degi shem trevi to tzinam deg shem trevi, yeah. So I mean, that was nobody's listening to that or whatever. I mean, so I was about 5 people from the front when they attacked. I was no longer on the first line when they attacked. I was about 5 people back, which is still very close. It's maximum 15 feet, 5 meters, something like that. They attacked the water cannon. The water cannon opens up, the pepper spray first, so everybody runs, and everybody runs about 1 block to Chanturia Street, okay? And then poof, they start shooting the tear gas canisters, which look like artillery rockets. You see, shoo, all the tear gas canisters. And as I was running away, I actually lost my flag. It fell off the stick, but I still had the stick. I was, I'm going to keep this stick because I have a bad back. I use it as a walking stick. So what typically happens is the gas dissipates. The RoboCops, they're cowards. They're absolutely cowards. They're only brave when they're behind their shields and when they're in their big numbers and when they have their pepper spray and everything like that. When they use the pepper spray, they go out, they grab people, they beat people, then they run back. Like the cowards that they are, they run back to their line and the group comes back, the protesters come back. So I come back towards the front line after this big attack. Now, of course, everybody is furious because we've just been attacked in a huge way. It's so funny. You listen to these officials. The protesters are yelling bad words at the police. It's like, what do you expect? They deserve much worse. You've been attacked. You're unarmed and you've been attacked. So people come back to the front line, and I said, I'm going to be smart, and I'm going to be more safe. And instead of being right on the front, the whole crowd of protesters and RoboCops, they're on the asphalt between the sidewalks. I said, I'm going to go over to the side a little bit, to the left side, onto the trottoir, onto the sidewalk.
So that it directly does not...
So that I can escape easier, because you could run away easier, right? I thought I was being safe. And about 20 meters, so I'm to the side of the main group of protesters and cops, maybe 8-10 meters to the left side in front of that museum that's there where Lesa Ukrainka comes down across the street. And there's a group of RoboCops about 20 meters in front of me, and they look like they're resting from the attack. Some of them have taken their helmets off, they're sort of standing there. So from about 20 meters away, I start yelling at them, Monebo, Rusebo, Mohaltebo, okay? I was angry. But based on experience from all night, I didn't think that they would attack me for yelling bad words at them, and I wasn't even close to them, again, 20 meters away. And all of a sudden, they rush at me. About 10, 15 of them, they just targeted me and they rushed at me. And my mistake was I was separated from the main crowd. I was there was two guys near me, but I didn't even know them, and and as soon as they rushed at me and grabbed me, I did not resist. I had that stick, I did not use it. If they have cameras, let them show their film. I know that I didn't use it because I knew immediately, like, I'm trying not to use bad words in English, I'm screwed, okay? There's nothing I can do. And I have never been attacked at a protest by police, I've never been gassed by police, but I have read about what you should do if you are, and they say if they grab you to go completely passive, do not resist, okay? And so I did not resist at all. I was completely passive, I just was like, oh, I hope they don't kill me, okay? So they carried me, and they were very incompetent at carrying me. And I weigh 102, 103 kilos, I'm not small. So they kept dropping me. They were trying to like carry me, but they were carrying me close to the ground. So I got scraped up on my back. And while they were carrying me, there were guys on the side. Maybe there were 4 or 5 guys carrying me. There were guys on the side who were reaching in and punching me and cursing me. And what was funny was one of them kept calling me Rusoshin, Rusoshin, which was like what we had been calling them. And I was wearing a T-shirt that said, and I don't even speak Russian, but I know what I can read Cyrillic. I was wearing a T-shirt that said "Ruski korabl idi nachwi." So maybe he couldn't read Russian, and he thought I was a Russian because I had Russian on my T-shirt. I don't know. Anyway, so it's not funny, but I mean,
it is not funny.
It's not funny,
it
but
is not funny.
My way of coping.
Definitely, yeah.
Everything I've written about this and talked about, my way of coping is humor, and so
exactly. And I think
Yeah.
it is the coping mechanism
it's a coping
that
mechanism.
is
Yeah. So
is establishing.
So they're carrying me. These guys are beating on me while they're carrying me. And while they were carrying me, I heard one voice from among them. I couldn't see them. They had masks. And anyway, I probably had my eyes closed to try to protect myself. But I hear this voice saying, "Show, Sakmaricia, Sakmaricia." One of them is saying, "Stop beating him." He said, it's enough, what he meant. But they didn't stop. And then they dropped me on the ground right in front of Kashreti Church, which of course I thought was ironic. They dropped me on the ground right in front of Kashreti Church and kept kicking me and beating me while I was on the ground. And I laid on the ground like this, and this side was exposed. So this is why they beat me, this was the most. I was laying on my left side and I was like this. And again,
and I can see it is still visible.
yeah, and the worst place they got me was right here. You have a soft place here where that's open, and they beat me particularly hard right here, the jaw, the teeth, here. But also other places, my knee, my elbows were quite banged up. And anyway, so during this beating, after they dropped me on the ground, again, I hear that voice, "Show, Sakmaricia, Sakmaricia." And it stopped. Walk away, oh my God, I'm laying like this. And then they came back and kicked me.
They started.
Yeah, so basically I was beaten in 3 parts. When they were carrying me, when they first dropped me, they left for a minute, and then 3 or 4 of them came back and started beating me again, okay? And then it finally stopped. And somebody seemed to sort of get control of the situation, and they dropped 2 young guys down next to me, who, to me, they looked like they were 17 or 18. They may have been the same 2 guys who were near me when I was standing on the sidewalk, I'm not sure. One of them had his hands, he was handcuffed with the plastic Ziploc, but me and the other guy, we didn't have handcuffs. So they kept us sitting there for a few minutes, and then they grabbed us very roughly, and they pushed us across the street, and the van, the police van, was parked right in front of the first school. It was a white Marshutka, no windows on the sides, has 2 doors on the back with Setka on the windows, and they stuffed us very violently into the van. And one of the things that I noticed through the course of the night is, even if they haven't beaten somebody before that point, when they push them in the van, they like to do it really violently. The van has 2 doors. They don't open both. They only open one side, so it's really narrow. Somebody my size, they're shoving you in there, and they're doing violence while they shove you in there. So I get into the van and I'm beaten up and there's the two guys there. I can't really even speak.
How long have you been in the van?
I was in the van
Because
for almost 2 hours.
That was when we were when I was messaging
Right.
you.
So as they were pushing me into the van, they said, "Telephone, mogwati, telephone, live Argvinda. They were afraid that the people were going to film. So I said, "Davkar geçimi telephone, Aramax." My wife says it's the only time you've told a lie when you were supposed to. And so I had my phone in my pocket, but I couldn't even, like my hands were shaking and I felt so discombobulated, I couldn't even sort of use it, but I had it. So after a few minutes, after I sort of got stabilized, and my nose was bleeding a lot, and I have a picture that I took in the van of the blood coming from my nose, clothes were covered with blood, so my nose was really bleeding. And it still hurts. And every 10 minutes or so, that one door would swing open and they'd stuff somebody else in violently. So over the course of the time I was in the van, which was about an hour and a half to 2 hours, a total of 11 people, 8 more people were stuffed into the van. In other words, there were 11 people. I counted 10 people. It was pitch black in the van. There was no air. It was extremely hot. I counted 10 other people in the van.
And how big is that van? I mean,
Like a small marshutka. It's like a narrow marshutka. It's like an old narrow marsh. It's quite narrow. So with 11 of us in there, it was quite tightly packed. There was no air. It was really hot. It was black, pitch black, no light. And there's very little light that comes in through these windows that have setka on them. And so during that time, so once I sort of got my head back, I started to I sent messages to two. I don't want to use names, but I sent messages to 2 senior State Department officials who I know personally. And then the second message I sent to Eka Gigauri because I knew she was plugged into lawyers, so I sent Eka a message. And then I sent my wife a message. And and then also on my Facebook page, people started to say, I saw that people were saying, somebody saw you get arrested. Somebody saw you, we heard you've been arrested. We heard you've been beaten up. So I wrote in the comment, I said, I'm beaten up. I've been arrested and beaten up. I'm in a police van. So then the word started going around. During the time I was in the van, I never said to them, I'm an American, you have to let me go. I believed it was my right to stand on this as a Georgian citizen, and that as a Georgian, I wanted them to treat me as a Georgian citizen. And I didn't want any better treatment than anybody else. In fact, I was, like I said, in worse condition at that time than the other people in the van. For some reason, towards the end, at maybe 1:45, the door opened and they started beating on these 2 guys that were near the door, where the door opened. There were 2 guys who were sitting near the door. Now, I was the furthest back because I'd been the first one in. So I see this is happening, right in front of me. And they did it like 2 or 3 times. They would beat on them, close the door, then come back, beat on them more. At one point, there were 4 of them. I think it was 4, 2 to 4, inside the van beating on them. And at that point, I got scared. I thought, they're going to beat all of us. We're in this small space. They're in there with their clubs and their equipment. So I sent a couple of texts at that moment, one to Eka Gigauri and one to another lawyer, Anano Tsinsabadze, who had contacted me and said, they're beating us in the van. We need help. They didn't beat me, but I just said, they're beating us and we need help. Then about 15 minutes later, about 2 o'clock, Eka calls me on the phone and she says, let me talk to the police. I said, Eka, these people are guerrillas. They're not going to talk to you. I mean the RoboCops. She said, tell them it's Eka Gigauri. I want to talk to them. I said, all right. So we bang on the door. They open the door. I said, I didn't say Eka Gigauri. I just said, it's my lawyer. And he laughed at me and closed the door. and then she said, try again, and put me on speakerphone. So again, we bang on the door, they open the door, and then she says on speakerphone, it's Ekagiga Ori, get so-and-so, or get somebody, okay? So I said, they're still laughing about this. And she said, yeah, okay, but they know. And then one of the guys said, he's gone to get somebody. So one of the RoboCops did leave. So then a few minutes later, door opens and it's regular police. First time I've seen regular police. Up until then, it had been all guys with masks, RoboCops. Guy shows up, no mask, 3 of them. He's wearing a Shususa hat. There's 4 RoboCops behind him looking like the stupid people that they are, like this, standing behind them. And he says, he's like, Amerikeli, sadari, Amerikeli akaris. And everybody in the van is like, Kiki, akaris Amerikeli, kaikatsi, gaushwe, eskatsi. They were really nice. We had become comrades, in the van. And so they took me out of the van. They walked me over to a police kind of command post that was maybe another 30 meters away, right in front of the Parliament building. And then this tall, gray-haired guy, regular police uniform, looks like an officer, speaks good English, you can see the type. He looks like part of the elite of the police. And he starts speaking to me in English, which was the first time anybody had spoken to me in English all night, which is fine. I'm a Georgian citizen. I know Georgian. I was using Georgian with everybody. And he asked me my name, to see my documents. I said, well, my documents are in my phone, and they took my phone. They insisted on taking my phone. So I said, you've got to give me my phone, and I'll show you my passport and everything else. So then he...
so this regular police took you.
They took the phone, yeah. And he said, we have to keep your phone. That's the procedure. He said, you get in the police car with these guys, and they're going to take you to the police station. And I said, what's going to happen to the people in the van? And they wouldn't answer me. And so it took a long time to drive to the police station because the streets were blocked. And the police got lost in Chugureti, trying to get around to the Diromi police station. So I told them how to get to the police station. I said, drive up to the Tbilisi Sea, go along the side of the Tbilisi Sea, go down. Oh, So I began to feel very sick and very ill in the car. I had already in the van was feeling bad. My head was swelling and all this. When we got to and I'm sorry if this is not pleasant, but when we got to the police station, as soon as they let me out of the car, I vomited, and I vomited several times. Then they took me upstairs. I think it was the 5th floor, but I'm not positive. They took me upstairs to an area that was offices, all kind of white walls. And we were just standing in the hallways. And I said, look, don't you have some ice or something? Can I sit down at least? And they said, well, we don't have any ice. Maybe you can sit down. Just wait a minute. And I kept thinking, I said, there was a couple of times that I said, I think I need an ambulance. I'm really sick. I think I need to go to the hospital. If I had insisted, if I had pushed it, they would have done it. They didn't reject the idea. They just sort of, I think if I had pushed it, I could have gone to the hospital, but I really just wanted to get out of there. So as long as I sort of felt okay. Anyway, while they were having me fill out the reports, I threw up again. I said, I'm going to get sick. They were taking me to the bathroom again. I threw up all over the floor. Again, I'm sorry to give too much detail, but the vomit was basically all water and blood. And I said to them, see, look how much blood there is, because it had all come out of my nose and had come out, And so basically we finished doing the report. I was getting a sense that they were going to let me go. They didn't say it explicitly, but they were trying to get it done as fast as possible. And for example, I didn't use a translator. The guy said, your Georgian seems to be fine. Can you read and write Georgian? I said, yeah, I can read and write Georgian, but for something legal and important involving my rights, it would be better to have a translator. He said, it's going to take us 4 or 5 hours to get a translator. And I said, hey, I cannot stay here for 4 or 5. I said, if I have to stay here, if you want me here for another 30 minutes, you need to take me to the hospital because I feel really bad. So I think, that they were quite direct and honest in what they did. They said, this is Ted Jonas, date of birth, Anaklias Ganvitarebis, Portis Consortiumis, Sametwachuros Amchos Tsevria, you know, my date of birth, everything. And they also examined my injuries. They had me take my clothes off so they could see everywhere I was injured. They recorded the injuries. The only thing they wouldn't record, even including injuries I didn't know I had, they told me I had scrapes all over my back and everything, which I hadn't even felt yet. I said, what about my nose? I've been bleeding from my nose all night. I was still, when I would blow my nose, there was still blood coming out. And they said, well, we don't see anything on your nose. I said, but there's blood coming out and it hurts, you know. But I think it seemed, then we read it back, so it seemed that they had put everything there. They said that I was charged with disobeying the police. And he said, if you have any disagreement with what's in the OCMI, you can say so in court. You'll have your day in court. I said, okay. I have still not heard anything from them. I have not received any, what we call in American English, a summon. So I don't know if they intend to pursue the case or not. On the one hand, I'm very happy to not deal with going to court and all of that. On the other hand, I would also be very happy to say in front of a judge what happened to me and explain the way that they behaved.
Yes, and that this was not a disobedience. And
yes,
this is
absolutely. Exactly the story that I've just told you. And so anyway, they let me leave the police station. It was I'm a little bit unsure about the time on this. It was near 5 o'clock in the morning. They let me leave. They said, I'm like, how will I get home? They were like, take a Bolt or take a taxi. I went outside, and this is kind of funny. So they signed me out. I go outside the gate, and I call a Bolt, and I'm feeling sick again now. For the third time, I'm feeling sick. And I'm thinking, oh no, if I vomit right when the Bolt comes, he won't let me get in his car. And sure enough, again, I vomit right when the Bolt arrives. And I vomit several times. And then I come around the door, and I open the door, and I said, Trali Aravarim Trali, Tsemes meetings, Amitom, oh, Shemodi. And he was a young guy, and he was cool. And so that was it. I got home. I saw my wife. I think the only time I shed a tear the whole night was when I saw my wife, and she did too. She was very tough, and I had been very tough, I think. And you know, but you see your family, and it brings out emotion. And I couldn't go to sleep. I mean, despite everything that had happened. So you know, we sort of hung out in the morning. I rested a bit, and then I felt good enough physically to go to the hospital at about noon. So I went to the hospital and had a full examination at the hospital. They tested everything.
So how are you now?
Right. So they were quite certain, and also my wife's cousin is Sandro Tiscaridze, who's a well-known neurologist here, so we had been on the phone with him. He was certain I had a concussion. So at the hospital, they examined everything. The neurologist's conclusion was that there was no physical damage, no broken bones, no fractures in the head, and that there was not a concussion. That was his conclusion. The ophthalmologist, so I had all these symptoms, and still I'm seeing like squiggly lines in front of my eyes and things that are like lightning bolts on the sides and stuff. So she said there's a big chance that you have damage to your retina, which is a part of the eye sort of in the back. And she did a full examination. She said, amazingly, there's not physical damage to it. She said the reason that you're having these hallucinations and things is because of the trauma, and it's been knocked around. I will say that today, I'm now preparing the claim for the Special Investigative Service, okay? I've talked to, people began to contact me. Human Rights Watch contacted me on the next day. I gave them evidence and information. And then Human Rights, I knew from Eka Gigauri that Sandro Baramidze at TI was acting as a lawyer for people who'd been beaten. So, and people at Human Rights Watch said, even though we are cooperating with TI and Baramidze, still you should talk to him directly. So I gave all of my evidence and information to Baramidze, and I know Baramidze, and he's a very capable criminal lawyer, a very capable human rights lawyer, a very smart man. And so he said, we're going to need another examination by a forensic specialist. So I had that examination this morning. They believe that there was a concussion, and what they're saying is that the doctors use a more strict standard of physical evidence of concussion, but more sort of modern practice is that you can have brain injury or head injury that doesn't show those kinds of physical effects.
So you are not scared?
Well, you know, I wasn't scared the whole night. While I wasn't physically resisting them.
But when you realize...
Oh, but I would saying things to them. When I went to the police station, who did this to you? They said, Vin Gakita, Vin Semdi. I was like, Vin Semdi, Shini Tanam Shlomebi, Rat Kamaunda, Shini Banzi Tanam Shlomebi. So I mean, I said to all of them, you know, in other words, I maintained my resistance in my spirit. And I can't say that this was even a conscious thought. It wasn't. It's just adrenaline.
Instinct.
It's just your anger. It's just that you've been abused. And I know that I'm right, and I know what they did was wrong.
Next Sunday, we will present the second part of the interview where Ted Jonas analyzes the big picture where these protests fit. Meanwhile, the business community held a press conference. Here are some faces and voices from the press conference.
On behalf of the German Business Association, we are currently receiving a lot of inquiries, and there's a huge nervosity in the business community because it's not only about one single law. The topic is about the entire direction of the country. Since decades, Georgia was always on one thing very clear, and this is the integration into the European Union. It is mentioned in the constitution of the country. It is part of the association agreement. Because of that, we have received the tax-free trade agreement with the European Union, the visa travel regime, the candidate status, so many things that have been done step by step by step, huge successes. All of these successes now seem to be under risk. Because if we are upsetting our European partners, if we are upsetting the European Union, and if the discussions and the negotiations about the candidate status is not progressing, then a lot of investment decisions are questionable, because businesses came to Georgia because of all these positive developments. They see it as the fundament for their decision why they came here. If this is not happening, or if the country takes a step back or goes into a different direction, or if European Union as a result of that law will somehow slow down or stop even discussions with Georgia, it is jeopardizing the interest of the companies. So it is affecting old investments, but it definitely also will affect new investments.
We are business associations, and we are really enjoying having European companies and Georgian companies who trade with Europe. And the main aim just to boost the trade and economy between Europe and Georgia. And I can sum up what my colleague says, that just to make a decision for investment for most of the company takes few years, 2, 3, 4 years. And this investment decision based on many factors, economicals, politicals, and any others. And Georgia was really enjoying booming of investment, especially from SME and European companies in last year, thanks to the very transparent financial law, Estonian model, and many companies, even Estonian, were considered to move their companies here, which is mean extra businesses, need for workforce, and Georgia has quite a good perspective. With this law, we have the same issue in the last few weeks as German business associations. We have a lot of calls and requests because companies try to understand what is going on and where we're going. And if the company will put on hold investment decision, it means that it will be bring back again to 4 or 5 years back.
What else was new in business this week? On to Natia Taktakishvili.
Tbilisi Hills, located in the village of Teleti near Krzanisi district, has already started pre-sales of the apartments with a 15% discount. The first buyers will be able to enjoy exclusive benefits and the best conditions. 3 4-story buildings are under construction in the territory of Tbilisi Hills, each of which will have 44 apartments. The apartments are constructed in accordance with European quality and standards, ensuring the use of top-quality European building materials. Each building's underground floor will be designed for parking. Each apartment will be facilitated by the sliding stained glass windows, and high ceilings, balconies and soundproof walls are a guarantee that the personal space of each resident is protected. The large terraces of the apartments will allow the residents to build an outdoor pool if desired. One of the main benefits of Tbilisi Hills is the first professional golf course in Georgia, which covers 60 hectares and has 80 holes. Guests and residents of Tbilisi Hill will also find a European restaurant close to golf course and enjoy delicious meals. Tbilisi Hills complex is located near Krzanisi, and Freedom Square is only 15 minutes drive away. The outstanding location of the complex allows residents to be close to the city center while living in a peaceful, ecologically healthy environment. Resort Sairme will receive land area of 1,400 hectares in Wani and Baghdadi municipalities under a 49-year lease. The leasing fee will amount to $1,000 per year. The relevant decree was published on the website of the government administration on April 24. According to the investment commitment, the company should build a 750-room hotel within 8 years. Also, the company must develop recreational space and arrange ski tracks. The schedule is written in the decree. According to the document, Resort Sairme should invest $80 million in order to fill its obligations. Also, the company should employ 100 people for the next 8 years. According to the business register, the 100% shareholder of the company is Temur Kokhodze, while Anna Janiashvili is the acting general director of the hotel. The first Holiday Inn resort in Georgia will be opened in Batumi in 2025. The project value amounts to $200 million and consists of 2 blocks. High-class investment apartments equipped with international standards will be placed in Block A, while residential real estate will be located in Block B. According to Georgi Dolidze, director of project management company HSC Group, Holiday Inn Resort is a 5-star facility that features unusually large spaces, recreational areas, a large pool, conference rooms, entertainment spaces, restaurants, and etc. According to him, 6 or 7 international brands are planned to enter Georgia in 2024 and 2025. The management company thinks that the entry of world-famous brands into the country will further increase the real estate prices in Ajara. In general, international brands are very interested in Georgia. 6-7 brands will be introduced in 2024 and 2025. Construction price grows once a quarter, so the selling price also increases. I don't think real estate prices will decrease in the coming years. My opinion, it will increase by at least 5 or 7% year-on-year, said Georgi Dolidze. Uber is planning to expand in Georgia. A source has informed BMDG initially the company will offer various services, including the premium service called Uber Black. At this stage, it's not known exactly when the Uber will be launched in Georgia, but according to the sources, users will be able to use the application in a few weeks. The Uber app called Uber G is already available in the Georgian App Store and Google Play. The app is also available in the Georgian language, and users can register, but ordering a taxi is not possible at this stage. Founded in San Francisco in 2009, Uber operates in 70 countries, employs over 6 million drivers. In addition to taxi services, Uber offers food delivery and animal transportation. Uber is a public company traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Uber's market cap exceeds $144 billion USD. Mako Gagnidze, co-founder of family business Cottages in Tsaghweri, located in Tsaghweri Resort, told BMDG that they are planning to arrange yearly infrastructure and entertainment spaces this year. According to her, they have been in tourist business for 15 years, and in total, they have 5 cottages located in vineyard. We have been in this business for 15 years and already have many loyal customers. The load on the cottages comes mainly during the summer and for the new year. Our guests are mostly Georgians. We host them for at least 10 days and more. Compared to the previous year, we did not need to increase the prices. The cost of staying in our cottage for one night starts from 80 lari, and we can accommodate up to 35 people in total, says Kagnidze. According to her, at this stage they already have pre-booking for summer, although it's still early and cottages in Tsaghweri expect to have more bookings in summer. Kagnidze also talks about the challenges and notes that it's a challenge for business to cooperate with the bank as loan interest rates are too high. Nino Maisashvili, the founder of private kindergarten Lardi, says that finding a qualified teacher is associated with great difficulty and one of the main challenges in their sector. According to her, Lardi plans to create a space where teachers will improve their qualifications through a 3-year program. Currently, 6 people are employed in Lardi kindergarten. Lardi was opened 4 months ago near Lissy Lake. It took us 3 years to open the kindergarten, in which we invested $300,000 USD. Our garden is fully adapted to all modern standards. The internal space of the garden is 1,200 square meters with no artificial cover, Nino Maisashvili said. Lardi gets children from the age of 3. As for the tuition fee, it amounts to 1,500 lari per month. The tourist facility Riverside Racha is going to renew its infrastructure this year. The complex will build an outdoor pool and renovate the cottages. As facility manager Ketevan Abutidze said in an interview with BMTG, they are going to invest about 20,000 lari to fulfill this plan. Riverside Racha includes 5 well-furnished cottages, each of which can accommodate 4 or 5 people. As Ketevan Abutidze noted, the price increase is not expected this year. Last year, after the Showi tragedy, we had to adjust the prices and offer discount to the customers. In addition, we also cancelled a certain number of reservations. We suppose that the prices will not increase compared to the previous year. The current price is reduced by about 10% compared to 2023. Accommodation for 5 people in a cottage costs over 200 lari instead of 280 lari in the same period last year, Abutidze said. The manager of Riverside Racha also talks about the challenges in the region and notes that gas and electricity supply are still a problem. According to her, gas supply to the villages has started and probably the meters will be installed in a year and the region will have gas. Besides gas, electricity is also a challenge in Racha. Consequently, the light often goes out in winter. Therefore, the region is not ready for winter season, she said.
Europe editor for RFE/RL in Prague, Grigor Jozwiak, tweeted this week that EU ambassadors discussed Georgia again, including potential measures in case the foreign agent law is adopted. Suspending visa liberalization cannot be ruled out. All things on the table. The checkpoint sat down for a short interview with Grigor Jozwiak. Mr. Jozwiak, thank you for being with us and thank you for taking my questions. I read your tweet where you were talking about the meeting of the EU ambassadors and also visa liberalization being on the table. What can you tell us more about this meeting? What do you know so far?
Well, basically, it shows that the EU is starting to be more and more worried about what's going on in Georgia. They are monitoring the protests, the violence against protesters, and they are starting to sketch up some sort of idea of what they would do and what they will look at in case this foreign agent law is adopted in June. And the sources I've spoken to said that, listen, everything is on the table, right? That doesn't mean that visa liberalization will be suspended. There are other options as well. I think the visa liberalization is a sort of last resort. But the very fact that it's being considered and that the EU is talking about it and they are quite open about this shows how serious and how worried they are about the direction of Georgia's traveling.
How do you think these sanctions, including visa liberalization, will be directed towards the high officials, those who are fully responsible on adopting this law, or for everybody?
So this is the interesting aspect of this. Visa liberalization can be suspended using a qualified majority, meaning that there is no country that can veto anything, right? So it's actually, I'm not saying it's easy to do it, but it's easier than to impose individual sanctions. Why? Because when you impose sanctions, when the European Union imposes sanctions on people, specific people, you need unanimity, meaning consensus. And as you know, Georgia has a friend in the European Union, that's Hungary. They would veto this. So visa liberalization hitting everyone is actually easier to do, even though it's difficult. So that is why individual sanctions are not in the same degree being looked at this moment.
What is your approach, like looking at Tbilisi, Rustaveli Avenue, looking at protesters, looking at the government dealing with these protests? Which scenario are you weighing in? Would you bet on? Do you think we will have this law in June? Do you think the EU will need to come up with some kinds of sanctions?
I think, and this is when I speak to EU officials as well, is that they still believe that this law or that this proposed law will not become a law. They still believe that there will be a U-turn like it was last year. So there is still hope, there's still time to change this. But the worry is being increased all the time. And the EU official I speak to now are already sort of saying, like, but what do we do if some of these protesters are being killed? They're already being injured. What about if they're being killed? What do we do? So the ball is very much in Tbilisi's court right now, because this is about what Georgia does. The EU is monitoring right now. They're looking at different scenarios, and they still hope for the best, but are starting to prepare for the worst.
So can we say that there will be no sanctions before the law? The law is some kind of an I don't know, like a watershed.
Exactly. So basically, right now, nothing. Well, I'm not saying that nothing has not happened, but basically, the law is the thing. So that is the let's say the Gordian knot. That is the watershed, as you said it. Before that, I doubt that there will be big consequences. But if the law enters into force, there will be consequences. And I think the first consequence will be that Georgia will not move forward on its EU accession. That is the obvious thing, right? Because you cannot be an EU member and have a foreign agent law. That doesn't work. And you see that as well, even when it comes to visa liberalization, actually, that I can't think of a single country that has visa liberalization with the European Union that also has a foreign agent law. So these are incompatible already there. So that will be the first victim. It will be your chances of one day joining the European Union that will suffer from this.
And my last question from your talks, not only with the EU officials, but probably with businesses, business communities, business circles. Does all this hurdle around this Russian law, this questions whether Georgia is changing its course officially against the West or not, driving closer to Russia, does this already hurt the investors' sentiments? Do you see those question marks arising there?
It hurts Georgia's image, let's say. I mean, business as such, they are usually, if you talk about private business, they are usually not particularly interested in politics to begin with, but they are interested in image. And image is getting worse for Georgia. For many years, it was sort of like, oh, you know, it's an up-and-coming country where you should invest in. Right now, when you see these sort of things on TV all the time, and Georgia is starting to become quite a big international news story. It's not just something for people like me who follows Georgia all the time. People are asking, people who normally don't care about this part of the world, saying, okay, what's going on here? So image is a lot of things. In a world of social media, the way you portray yourself is important. And right now, with these sort of question marks, when you see what's going on, when you see as well about, you know, when you invest in something like a company, and there are people who are sort of saying, like, well, why are you investing there when there is sort of, you know, human rights abuses or whatnot? These sort of things are important when private business also decide, okay, are we going to open a factory there or not? So the picture of Georgia is not as rosy was interesting as it was before. Let's put it that way.
Before the law. That's
Before the proposed law. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Özbek, for your time, and thank you for these answers.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
And that's all for today. We will meet next Sunday, 11 a.m. sharp. But before that, you know what to do. You have to follow us on BM.G for more news and outlook on business and economics in Georgia, in the region, and beyond.
The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.